If you want to be a follower of Jesus, you have to listen to what he said just before he ascended into heaven. He said, I want you to go to the whole world and share the good news. Are we really willing to do that? Well, in this experience of trying to get you to think about God and to think about the place of Christ in your life, I had the joy of inviting some friends to come in and to tell their stories and know that from their stories, you're going to be able to pick up something that maybe is going to give you a rope, if you will, if things are starting to sink, a rope of hope to be able to know that you have a place, you have a challenge, and there is a road that you can go to. I spoke in the tease, if you were listening to that, about the importance of remembering that Christ is not just saying, if you want to be a follower of mine, I want you to feel real good in your heart, and I want you to also to struggle with sin and kind of be centering on yourself. The call of Christ is a call that goes beyond that. It's a call to being able to take the reality of being loved, forgiven, and accepted by God, and then being on fire to share that with other people. Today we're going to be talking with a dear friend for many years. Gosh bless you, Elise. Thank you so much for coming and being with us. We were saying we knew each other for a while, but it's going back 10, 15, maybe even 20 years that we've known each other. And I've admired what you've done in a very strong way, because I think that you kind of resonate with what I'm saying in terms of the call of Christ as one of making sure that we're not just feeling good or doing certain things in a comfortable context, but getting out and doing other things. You become involved with an organization. What's the name of the organization?
Lay Mission Helpers Association and Mission Doctors Association.
So, lay people that decide to give how many?
3 years.
3 years, okay.
And many more.
Lay even more. And this isn't just, let's say, a mechanic or a nurse or a bookkeeper.
Exactly.
Or it isn't just an individual, it also might be a family. Are you?
Married couples and families as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they go, where do they go?
We have served in 36 countries around the world since we were founded.
36 countries. So I'm sitting in the comfortableness of my own home here, and I'm occupied with all the things that I'm occupied with, making sure that I can pay my rent and the electricity bills, and taking care of the children, and all the things that are involved with living in our world. And then all of a sudden, this kind of message pops in, and it seems strange. It seems uncomfortable, because all of a sudden we're thinking about moving to another place, moving out of my world into something else. Now, I've thrown that out, but I want to know your story. Tell me a little bit about your life and your relationship with Christ.
You know, I can't speak about that without talking about my mother.
Okay.
My mother, both my parents were truly people of faith. My mother, though, had a unique relationship with God and her role as a missionary, even though she never left this country. Sitting on our coffee table at home were always magazines on mission. The magazine that comes out for the...
Going way back.
Oh, my goodness, yes. I was born in 1955, so I'll let other people do the math. So sitting on our coffee table were mission magazines or magazines from other religious orders that did mission work. And so this was kind of always part of our home. But beside that, when evangelistic groups would come and knock on our door, my mother would...
Jehovah's Witnesses,
any group.
The Mormons, talking about going out and doing more than what you're doing now.
Exactly. Okay. My mother would greet them kindly and speak with them and say, I'm very happy to read your literature if you'll read mine. And she would grab one of these magazines and share it with them. She was always very gracious, and she always told us that the people who were sharing their faith, we were called to do as well. And so in any way we were to do it, this was how she could do it.
So the seed was put into you.
It was.
this is something that you need to be thinking about.
Exactly.
Tell me about your relationship with this Christ, though. Okay, your mom is saying, let's be a Christian. There comes a time in our life, though, when there's kind of a question of, well, should I get excited about Jesus, or should I just be able to maybe just live my life the way I am, or follow the direction of my mother?
Exactly.
And be, yes.
And honestly, I believe so much of it, again, goes to a witness that I was given. My mother died of colon cancer in her early 50s.
Oh, boy.
And she actually shared that her pain was something that she could offer up. And I thought that unique witness of taking her pain, and she had quite a bit of pain because, colon cancer back in the 70s was a very different kind of diagnosis.
Yes.
And at 17, I was taught how to give her the morphine injections at home.
Wow.
So my mother was
now, wait a minute, just a minute.
Yeah.
When you face a crisis like this, it's very easy to get angry at God.
I did.
Did you?
I did get angry at God. After my mother died, I was very angry for a while. And I had a priest who told me that was okay, God could take my anger. And that he was still going to be there for me when I was...
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think a lot of us face difficult problems, and it's very easy to say, why me?
Yeah.
And if God is really loving, why is he putting us in there?
Yeah.
Tell me, how did you work out with this? So you're angry with God, and you get a clean bill of health saying it's okay to do that.
Exactly. And it took time. It did take time to process this experience, to understand how my mother had seen this life experience, and to also recognize in myself that if I actually was going to be who I was called to be, I needed to get on the other side of it. And so little by little, a lot of prayers and kind of waking up and saying, okay, I don't believe that suffering comes from God, but I believe that in suffering, when there is suffering, we actually can be for others who Christ is calling us to be.
Yeah. When we experience suffering, one of the difficult situations of a Catholic church is whenever we walk into a church, there's a man hanging up on a cross who's naked with nails in his hands and feet. And if ever you wanted to be a good marketing person, that wouldn't be exactly the best way of inviting people. But in a different dimension, in a deeper level, this is really calling us to being aware that God can even be present in some of the physical, emotional, spiritual,
and in losses,
God is present too. So there was a reconciliation with God.
Yes, there was. He was always there. God was always there.
And you feel that faith, and that confidence.
Very much.
Thank you.
Very much so.
Well, now let's move on just a little bit. That your experience of this mission, which we spoke about at the beginning, is something that it was still stirring in your heart, along with the presence of God.
It was.
Did you want to call and want to listen to a call that said, I better get out of this country and go?
I didn't know that until one day my husband and I were a fairly young married couple, and we had our first son. He was only a couple months old, and we actually had stopped in at St. Luke's to go to Mass on Mother's Day. We lived
this is St. Luke's, which is a church in Southern California, close to where I lived and where you lived. Yes.
So we stopped there for Mass on Mother's Day, and just going to Mass, we were going to go visit his mom, and the person who was speaking at that Mass was Monsignor Tony Luer, who was then a member of the Propagation of the Faith office in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles.
Now, what does that mean, propagation of the faith?
Sure.
What is that?
What I understand is this is the Pope's office in every diocese. This is a way for all Catholics to be involved in the universal mission of the Church.
Oh, okay.
And so every diocese has a mission office in some capacity.
Okay.
Either it's one person working at a desk and ensuring that the diocese has an involvement in that way, but every diocese has some connection.
Thinking about something beyond where we are.
Exactly.
So what words kind of got to you in this?
Well, he was speaking about the lay mission helpers, and honestly, we're just listening, and then he said, a young family from an adjoining community is preparing to go. go. And Tom and I looked at each other and we went, well, that's what we're supposed to do.
Get out.
Honestly, it was as obvious to us as if we'd been knocked over the head.
So Tom had your husband had a kind of stirring in the same way. It isn't
Exactly.
strange.
It wasn't just me. But, and so we went and we talked to Monsignor Luer after the Mass and found that, found a little more. And then he said, well, fill out an application, come to the office. And then we went through the 4-month, well, at that time it was a 9-month formation program, 2 evenings a week and on Sunday afternoon. And then we were assigned to Thailand for 3 years. And we served in the northeast of Thailand for 3 years.
All right. Now, we're going to take a little bit of a break.
Sure.
I want to know what goes on with this training. Now, what do you do? You said for 9 months with that.
Sure.
But then I want to know a little bit about what happened in Thailand and what that experience was. Please, stay tuned and listen to this message, please. Lent is a somber time of negation and sacrifice. It's a time of fasting, penance, and almsgiving. During this time of preparation and stock-taking, we would like to offer you a special gift for your gift of $15 or more, a handcrafted crucifix. Each of these crucifixes has been handcrafted by Deacon Jim Weber with ultimate care and love. Made of a single piece of wire, it's exquisite in its detail and beauty. Get this for yourself and for your loved ones. And may this be a reminder of the love and sacrifice of the Lord for each one of us as we prepare to celebrate the great feast of Easter, the feast of our redemption. Use the telephone number or the email on the screen to contact us right now. May this be a sign of joy forever for you and the ones you love during this Lent and after. Elise, you've been telling us the story of your faith. You've been telling us the story also of a stirring about what it means to be not just a Christian who kind of lives in your own world, but suddenly a seed is put in, a word is put to you, and you and your husband are called to be missionaries, to go off to an organization called Lay Mission Helpers. You said that you went for 9 months of training. Is this like once a week?
At that time, it was 2 evenings a week and on Sunday afternoons.
Okay, Sunday afternoons.
Right, and now it's changed.
How do you train a missionary that maybe is moving from one world into a brand new world?
You know, I think that the way the organization continues to look at it is kind of packing the bag. So there are classes in scripture and theology and Catholic social teaching, cross-cultural communication, as well as just an awareness of the differences of culture. I
would imagine that would be one of the most challenging things of all. I mean, we could go through our study of the catechism and know what that. But when you come to a brand new culture, moving from the United States of America to Thailand, hello.
Exactly, and we moved when our son was 18 months old. We went overseas, and then we had 2 more children born while we were there.
Wow.
Yeah, our son Jacob was born in Bangkok, and our daughter Jessica was born up in Nakhon Ratchasima.
So you get a lot of cultural organization and an understanding about that. But then tell me, what kind of work did you get involved in when you go there?
So I worked for the bishop. I worked for Bishop George, Redemptorist bishop in Udon Thani, and my husband worked with the catechists, and he was creating teaching aids and helping them with develop materials.
Were the children affected in any way by what happened? In
I
what way? I mean, we
so.
can think of negative things because it would seem overwhelming. But what were some of the positive things that you think your little son was able to get involved?
I think they have even now, just a broader worldview.
Yeah,
I think they have an understanding that they're part of something beyond the borders of the United States. They have a broader view.
Wow, isn't that
And
beautiful?
I'm so grateful for that. So
now,
grateful.
You came back after 3 years. Could you tell us a story during those 3 years that when I ask you that, does something pop up to say, wow, this was something that was really very profound in my life and maybe gave you a positive reason, yes, I'm glad I did this.
Sure.
Did something happen special?
I would say it was the opportunity to witness the work of the priests and brothers and sisters. While we were in Thailand, it was the period of time with the refugee camps along the Laotian border and along the Cambodian border. And so we did a lot of work with the bishop to help document the work of the Catholic Church in the diocese, working in the camps. And so we got to witness the phenomenal efforts of the Catholic Church in caring for the poor. And I have always told people, if you ever have an emergency in the world, the group you can be so proud to support is Catholic Relief Service, because they're already there. And we saw the work that they did in the camps. And the Daughters of Charity, who, God bless them, would roll up their sleeves and work 16-hour days to care for people. It was a tremendous blessing to us to feel truly united and connected to the larger church.
Well,
and
you're
to
speaking
witness
of a
their work.
long time ago of a refugee situation, but the refugee
Exactly.
situation is overwhelming right now in our own
Exactly.
life, and
Exactly.
the experience and the challenge is just the same, isn't it?
It is. It really
the
is.
same.
It really is. You know, the people in the camps were not allowed to go out of the camps, and I know that is the same case in so many places.
Sure.
And then God bless Bishop George. He recognized that the people who lived around the camp felt as disenfranchised, and so he increased the services that could be provided for them as well. I thought that was a tremendous insight.
Trying to get to wherever people are.
Exactly.
Okay, but we've just got to, we don't have a lot of time now, but tell me now, you come back home and did you kind of say, wow, that was a good experience, now let's move on to the way we were before?
Well, this is the other gift that we've received in our lives. It's upon returning, I began working with Mission Doctors, which is the sister program. So the sister organization that sends the doctors and their families as well. So for 34 years, I've worked for Mission Doctors, and I've continued to work very closely with lay mission helpers. So the two organizations work hand in hand. The people go through formation together. They were created, both founded by Monsignor Brouwers, who was then the director of the Propagation of the Faith. So he founded these two organizations, but they kind of grew up a little separately. And so they're two separate boards of directors in two different organizations. But ultimately, they're people who serve.
So you've got lay people that are coming in with, for example,
Exactly.
you had an office experience of working with the bishop.
Right.
Your husband was able to do some teaching on what he did. But let's say that I'm a plumber, or I'm a computer person, or whatever. What if I have a very diverse understanding of how to make a living? Is there a place for a missionary?
You know, honestly, people from all walks of life have been able to contribute to this work. We've sent engineers, and we've sent people who have a background in accounting, and people who have just such a wide variety of backgrounds.
What if I'm a nurse or a doctor?
Well, that's kind of a slam dunk. There's always a need. And the way we do this is we respond to a request from a missionary bishop. So a missionary bishop communicates with us that there's a need, and then we communicate back, and we try to match missioners to serve with them. And so that is our goal, is to match the people who are serving in response. So it's not that we're going in response to our need to serve, we're going in response to a request.
I got to tell you that I had the privilege several years ago, through the lay mission helpers, of getting a trip to Ghana. And I was able to go to visit an eye doctor who was there with his wife.
Dr. James Guzak.
Oh, and it was an amazing thing. I went into this very remote village in Ghana, and here was this doctor, and what was amazing was, he said this was the first time there were 125,000 people in that area. First time they had ever had the chance of anyone to come and examine their eyes. And so all of a sudden there were glasses, and there were minor operations that were able to be made and whatnot. But it was like a, whoa.
He was also able to have that facility become a teaching facility eventually, and train Ghanaian ophthalmologist.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
his work was amazing.
I was very, very much touched by that and
Yeah.
that, but also I was able to get to Cameroon and be able to experience some of the teachers and some of the catechists and the people that were working in a situation now that when you say this with some of the news of Western Africa is not necessarily secure, but at the same time, I really feel that there is a sense of protection and care that if anything is ever going to go wrong, the protection is going to be there to pull out and to make sure that you're safe and secure. Are you with me on this?
Absolutely, and that is actually one of the reasons that we are connected with a bishop. So the bishop, we are in communication with them. We are, as an organization, responsible for our people because we send families. We want to make sure we're sending them to a place where we know that their security is taken care of.
And I was just meeting with a friend who came back from the Cameroon with a man and his wife. He was teaching in the major seminary, but 3 children.
Yes.
And the only white children in a gigantic school of maybe 400 African students.
And he was the first lay person to teach at a seminary.
Yes, and he came back and he said a fascinating thing. You know, you're hearing that and you're thinking, oh my gosh, that must have been very difficult for the children. And he said it wasn't difficult. It was something that was more enriching than difficult. And so this whole thing, on one level, is kind of scary. Leaving the comfort of our world, leaving all the you might not have the right internet connections and being able to use all the things that we so rely on now with gas and travel and freeway. But there's something that happens that is even more rich and profound that can even change and enrich our lives spiritually, emotionally, and even with relationships. You know,
Very true.
like that.
Very true.
Well, I got one more question, and the question concerns the response. When we look at the history of the Catholic Church, you find a rich experience of missionary activity. The whole evangelization of Latin America, the evangelization of Europe, the evangelization of great parts of places like South Korea and the Philippines and whatnot. Missionaries, men and women, gave up their lives and went out as missionaries. The numbers were high. But there's a tendency to be a little bit more concerned about our security and fear, perhaps, of making a commitment to being a missionary. Why is that?
Yeah, I think there are several reasons. I think we are in a cycle of 24-hour news where we are exposed to things that really breed fear, and I think fear is counterproductive to faith.
Yes.
I believe that if God is calling us to serve, we know that we're not doing it alone. We know we're not taking that step by ourselves. And it isn't for everybody. For those who do feel this tug on their heart and they do feel God is calling them. I have one doctor who always says, God just won't let you alone if God is calling you to this.
Yes.
But the thing is, over the 34 years I've worked for Mission Doctors, the number of stories and the connections that I've made. We have one doctor and his wife who served in Zimbabwe. And sitting on his desk, he had a picture of their 4 adult daughters. And one day a patient came in and pointed to the picture and said, Dr. Tim, are those your daughters? And he said, well, why, like any proud father, I kind of went, yes, those are my girls. And then the patient said, then why are you here? And he said, well, I thought for a minute and I said, well, there are people in the United States who care about you and they sent me to be here.
Whoa, thank you. We're going to come right back. I want to pray for Elise, I want to pray for the missionaries, but I want to pray for you and the things that are going on in your life. Stay tuned, we're going to be right back. Lent is a somber time of negation and sacrifice. It's a time of fasting, penance, and almsgiving. During this time of preparation and stock-taking, we would like to offer you a special gift for your gift of $15 or more, a handcrafted crucifix. Each of these crucifixes has been handcrafted by Deacon Jim Weber with ultimate care and love. made of a single piece of wire. It's exquisite in its detail and beauty. Get this for yourself and for your loved ones. And may this be a reminder of the love and sacrifice of the Lord for each one of us as we prepare to celebrate the great feast of Easter, the feast of our redemption. Use the telephone number or the email on the screen to contact us right now. May this be a sign of joy forever for you and the ones you love during this Lent and after. Elise, you just told me a story about this friend of mine, Rob, who had gone to Cameroon with his wife and 3 children. Tell me the story.
So their son Joshua, who at the time was about 12, was in school, and they had chosen a school that they understood corporal punishment had been eliminated. And sadly, they found out that that was still being done to some extent at the school. And in a class that Joshua was in, a student had been accused of something and was going to be punished, which meant a beating. And Joshua stood up and offered to take the beating for him.
Wow. Boy, that talks about a lot of surrender and union and willingness to be able to come one with a person, a world that perhaps had been so distant, and now it's real. We want to bring unity and peace also to one of the joys of the ministry is people who call in and who also email and go to our website and share things. It's a beautiful chance for us to share their stories and know that God is going to enter into their lives and bring about healing. Sharon from Indiana, her 2 daughters, half-sisters, they don't get along, you know, and so there's a real tough time. Erlinda from California, heal my body and may I return to work. From Texas, Loretta, help me be strong for my grandchildren. I'm raising 4 of them by myself. And Teresa from California wants to pray for the pain in her back. Would you put your hand up here? And let's just pray. Lord, I believe that you're a God who cares for us, but you're with us every day. And in Jesus, we found someone who entered into our life, opening the eyes of those that were blind, touching the legs of those that were crippled, enabling them to dance, being able to bring forgiveness to people whose lives were overwhelmed with guilt and fear. Lord, we believe that just as you've called us to be missionaries, you've called us also to continue your work. And so we stand before you, listening to your word and asking you, please, come into the lives of these people. Come into the lives of all of those that are at home. Bring healing and peace and life. And may Jesus' love for you always make you smile.